Modern hydraulic systems are complex, so complex that malfunctions cannot be diagnosed with an educated guess. Effective diagnosis requires a step-by-step procedure that thoroughly tests every part of the hydraulic system. The technical manuals for row crop and four-wheel drive tractors have a hydraulic diagnostic procedure. This program will give you an overview of that procedure. It will demonstrate how you can use the procedure to pinpoint hydraulic problems quickly and efficiently. Hydraulic diagnosis will be demonstrated on a 50 series row crop tractor with power shift transmission. The procedure you will see is very similar to the diagnosis for 30, 40, and 50 series row crop tractors and four-wheel drive tractors. These tractors may be equipped with quad range, synchro range, or power shift transmissions. The diagnostic procedure includes 58 steps. In most cases, you will need to perform only 12 of these steps to check out the entire hydraulic system. These 12 steps are relatively simple and easy to perform. The core group of 12 steps will quickly identify any problems in the hydraulic system. Only when you identify a problem will you need to perform additional steps. The diagnostic procedure will quickly lead you to the source of the problem. The entire procedure of 58 steps covers virtually any possible problem in the hydraulic system. It is highly unlikely you would need to perform more than about 20 steps in a typical maintenance situation. The technical manual is designed to be an important tool in the hydraulic diagnostic procedure. It is essential to understand how the procedure is structured. Each step has a number. Each step has a sequence of conditions and tests to perform. In each step, you note the results of the tests. Depending on the results, you go on to another step. Key results should be recorded on this form. The form should be kept as part of the tractor's maintenance record. A copy of the form is included at the end of the diagnostic section, and the forms are available in pads. At this point, we recommend that you get a technical manual for a 50 series row crop tractor. Take a few minutes to look over the hydraulic diagnostic procedure for power shift transmissions. Notice the step sequence result structure of the procedure. As this program continues, it will stop and allow you to go to the step that is being described. One word of caution. Step numbers vary slightly between the procedures for power shift and quad range transmissions. Press the restart button when you're ready to continue. When should you perform this diagnostic procedure? When the hydraulics are not functioning, when hydraulics are functioning slowly, when the hydraulic oil overheats, and after any major repair or overhaul of the hydraulic or transmission system. Hydraulic diagnosis begins with preliminary checks. These checks include talking to the operator, checking maintenance records, checking fluid levels, and looking for leaks. Use a card or piece of paper to check for leaks. Do not use your hand. High-pressure oil can penetrate the skin and cause serious injury. Next, check the oil filters and make sure the warning indicator system is functioning properly. On tractors with filter indicators, check the indicators first. On tractors without indicators, check the filters. The diagnostic procedure gives you a series of steps for performing checks on the indicator circuit. The remaining steps in the procedure require oil pressure measurements at various points in the system. This pressure test kit includes the gauges and fittings you will need to perform these measurements. Installing test equipment is covered in step number 6 of the procedure. Find step 6 and press the restart button. Install a 0 to 5,000 psi gauge at the pressure control valve. This gauge will measure main pump discharge oil pressure. Install the large 0 to 60 psi gauge at the return oil manifold. This gauge will measure lube oil pressure. Do not use the small 0 to 60 psi gauge for this test. Install a 0 to 300 psi gauge at the traction clutch valve housing. This gauge will measure clutch oil pressure. Install a 100 to 240 degree Fahrenheit temperature gauge on the transmission oil filter to measure oil temperature. Step number 6 also gives you the procedure for warming the oil to 110 degrees. Perform this procedure before doing any tests. The procedure involves putting a jumper hose across one SCV and dumping oil to sump from another SCV. You can also put a piece of cardboard over the oil cooler to heat the oil faster. With all gauges installed, you are ready to proceed with the diagnostic procedure. Step number 7 is the first diagnostic test. This step checks for any high-pressure leaks to sump. To perform this test, run the engine at 1500 RPM and record the lube pressure before and after destroking the main hydraulic pump. On most tractors, this will require installation of a destroking screw. Some 50 series may already have a destroking screw. The ratchet wrench in the pressure test kit can be used for destroking the pump. Record lube pressure at the return oil manifold before and after destroking the main pump. If lube pressure increases only 1 to 3 psi after destroking the pump, high-pressure leakage to sump is acceptable. The following series of diagrams will show how this test works. System pressure oil, dark orange, flows from the transmission pump to the pressure regulating valve. High-pressure oil, red, flows to priority and non-priority functions when they are activated. Return oil from those functions flows through the return oil filter to the return oil manifold. Lube pressure oil, dark blue, flows from the return oil manifold to the lube circuit. Let's assume there is a substantial leak in one or more of these components: hydrocushion seat, brake valve, or differential lock valve. A leak that goes from high pressure to sump. The leak reduces oil flow to the return oil manifold. That reduces lube pressure. Destroking the pump shuts off any flow of oil to the high-pressure system. Oil that was leaking to sump now flows to lube. Increased oil flow raises lube oil pressure substantially. If there is no high pressure to sump leak, lube oil pressure will not vary when the pump is put in and out of stroke. Now turn to the next step, number 17. Press restart when you're ready to continue. Step number 17, checking for high pressure leaks to return, also involves destroking the main hydraulic pump. With the rock shaft up and all other control valves at neutral, run the engine at 1000 RPM with the pump in stroke. Record engine speed before and after destroking the main hydraulic pump. If the tractor you are diagnosing does not have a digital tachometer, use a photo tachometer. Precise RPM readings are important in this test. If engine speed increases by less than 20 RPM when you destroke the pump, high-pressure leakage to return is acceptable. Let's see how this test works. This diagram shows the system operating normally. The main hydraulic pump pressurizes oil in the lines going to priority and non-priority functions. If none of the functions are activated, there is no oil flow in the high-pressure circuit. All charge pressure oil flows to lube. But what if one of the high-pressure components is leaking oil to return? In this case, indicated by the circled letter L, we show that high-pressure oil flows through one of the SCVs, even when it's not activated. If there is a leak, the main pump works to circulate oil. That load reduces engine speed. Remember that in these diagrams, we will point out all leaks with the circled letter L. Destroking the pump shuts off the flow of high-pressure oil that is leaking to return. This reduces the load on the engine, and engine speed increases substantially. If there is no high-pressure leak to return, engine RPM will not vary when the pump is destroked. High-pressure leaks to return cannot be detected by measuring lube pressure. Any oil that leaks to return goes to lube through the return oil manifold. The next step is number 23. When you've found it, press the restart button. The previous tests identified constant leaks. Some leaks can be detected only when a component is activated. Step number 23 checks the SCVs for internal leaks to return when they are activated. Remove any hoses from the SCVs. Move the SCV control levers back and forth, one at a time. Run the engine at 1,000 RPM and record engine speed as you work the SCV control levers. If the system is normal, engine speed will decrease less than 20 RPM when you move an SCV control lever. The diagram shows how this test works when there is no leak. With all the hoses disconnected, oil has nowhere to go when an SCV is activated. There is no oil flow from the main pump, so the pump does not work to circulate oil. Engine load does not increase, and the RPM reading stays the same. If an SCV leaks to return, oil will flow when the SCV is activated. The main pump works to circulate oil and loads the engine, decreasing engine RPM. An unacceptable leak to return will decrease engine speed by more than 20 RPM. Step number 24 is a series of checks for leaks to sump from the brake valves, differential lock valve, and seat valve. Run the engine at 1,000 RPM and step on the brake pedals one at a time. Then, step on the diff lock pedal. Finally, move the seat height control lever from high to low. Record lube pressure as you operate each of them, the brakes, diff lock, and seat valve. If lube pressure changes by less than 2 psi, the system is normal and you can proceed to the next test. If lube pressure changes by more than 2 psi, that indicates a leak to sump from the control valve that caused the change. Normally, very little oil flows to the diff lock, brake, and seat valves as they operate. A leak in one of these control valves will increase oil flow substantially and reduce lube oil pressure. An unacceptable leak to sump will change lube pressure by more than 2 psi. On tractors with power shift transmissions, you check for leakage in the clutch and brake release elements on the PTO and the mechanical front-wheel drive clutch. Adjust engine speed to obtain 10 psi lube pressure. Record lube pressure after you engage and disengage the PTO and after you engage and disengage the MFWD. The transmission must be in park for these tests. If lube pressure changes by less than 1 1/2 psi, the PTO and MFWD circuits are normal. You can proceed to the next test. Changes in lube pressure greater than 1 1/2 psi indicate leakage in a clutch or brake element circuit. The PTO clutch and brake release and the MFWD clutch all operate on system pressure oil, dark orange. Normally, very little oil flows to them. If there is a leak, oil flow through the leak will reduce oil flow to lube. Excessive leakage reduces lube pressure by more than 3 psi. If there is no leak, operating the clutches and brake release will do little to affect lube pressure. The next few tests involve operating the transmission. Make sure the transmission has been placed in the tow position before doing these tests. Steps 27 and 29 show you how to test the clutch and brake circuits in the power shift transmission for leakage. The procedure tells you what speed position will check which transmission element. Run the engine at 1,000 RPM. Engage and disengage the traction clutch pedal. As you engage and disengage the clutch pedal, record the clutch pressure at the traction clutch valve housing. If the pressure changes less than 4 psi, the system is normal. If the pressure changes more than 4 psi, there is leakage in a transmission element circuit. The system pressure gauge measures system pressure oil, shown in red. System pressure oil operates the power shift transmission elements. Normally, there is very little oil flow to the elements. A leak produces substantially more oil flow and reduces system pressure. A leak also reduces lube pressure, but the system pressure gauge gives you a more reliable indication. If you were diagnosing a tractor with quad-range transmission, the diagnostic procedure would give you tests to check for lube reduction valve function and to check the high-low system for leakage. Next, go to step 32 and press the restart button. Step number 32 checks clutch system pressure. On 50 series tractors, clutch system pressure should be between 170 and 180 psi at 2,000 RPM. If system pressure is within specifications, proceed to the next step, number 36. Record lube pressure with the engine running at 2,000 RPM. The diagnostic procedure lists several specifications depending on tractor model and oil temperature. If pressure is within specifications, go on to the next step, number 47. Step 47, checking for leaks from return to sump, uses the lube pressure gauge again. Record lube pressure at 1,500 RPM. Turn the SCV metering lever to the maximum flow position and connect a jumper hose across the SCV. Pull the control lever to circulate oil through the SCV and readjust the engine speed to 1,500 RPM. Record lube pressure while the SCV is circulating oil. If lube pressure has dropped by less than 4 psi at 150 degrees or 6 psi at 100 degrees, the system is normal. Proceed to the next step. A greater drop in pressure indicates a leak from the return circuit to sump. This diagram shows normal system operation. Return oil flows to lube through the return oil filter and the return oil manifold. Oil that leaks from the return circuit to sump reduces lube oil pressure. The cause of leakage from return to sump could be a restricted filter, faulty filter relief valve, or several other problems. The diagnostic procedure gives you a list of potential problem areas. Now, go to step 49 and press the restart button. Step number 49 checks standby oil pressure. Run the engine at 2,000 RPM and put all control valves in neutral. Record oil pressure at the pressure control valve. If pressure is within specifications, go on to step number 52. The pressure control valve check uses the same gauge. Reduce engine speed to 800 RPM. Pull on the SCV control lever to circulate oil through the SCV. The metering lever must be at the maximum flow position. If the pressure reading is between 1,600 and 1,700 psi, the pressure control valve is functioning correctly. An out-of-spec reading indicates a problem with the pressure control valve. If the reading is too high, the problem could also be in the SCV. Now, turn to step 54. Step 54, the main pump quick check, is the last step in the diagnostic procedure. Connect the flow meter across the SCV. Set the SCV metering lever to the maximum flow position. Open the SCV and set the engine at 1,000 RPM. Adjust the restriction setting on the flow meter to get 1,500 psi. If the oil flow is within specifications listed in the procedure, your diagnosis is complete. If you have gone through the entire procedure and still have not isolated your hydraulic problem, warm the oil to 150 degrees and repeat all the tests. It may take hotter, thinner oil to isolate the problem. In many tests, the procedure will give you different specifications for 150-degree oil. We've just shown you the 12 steps at the core of the hydraulic diagnostic procedure. These steps can be performed easily and quickly. They do not involve any elaborate disassembly and reassembly of hydraulic components. But what happens if one of the tests produces an out-of-spec result? The diagnostic procedure gives you additional steps to pinpoint the source of the problem. For example, let's go back to the test for high pressure to return leaks. Turn to step 17 and press the restart button. Step 17 calls for recording engine speed both before and after destroking the main hydraulic pump. Assume that engine speed has increased more than 20 RPM when the pump is destroked. This identifies a high pressure to return leak. But where exactly is the leak? The diagnostic procedure directs you to the next step. Oil flows from the pressure control valve to priority functions like steering and non-priority functions, SCVs and rock shaft. Step 18 isolates the problem by removing the high-pressure line to steering and other priority functions. Put a cap on the PCV elbow. Run the test again. With the engine at 1,000 RPM, record engine speed before and after destroking the main pump. If the engine changes less than 20 RPM, you have isolated the high pressure to return leak. The leak is somewhere in the steering system. If engine speed changes more than 20 RPM, high pressure oil is still leaking to return. The leak is somewhere in the SCV or rock shaft. The technical manual then directs you to go to step 19. To isolate the leak, step 19 tells you to position the rock shaft halfway up. Run the engine at 1,000 RPM and record engine speed before and after destroking the main pump. If engine speed decreases by less than 20 RPM, you have isolated the problem. The diagnostic procedure tells you that the rock shaft valve is too tight, the rock shaft piston packing is leaking, or the rock shaft cylinder is scored. If engine speed still increases by more than 20 RPM when you destroke the main pump, the diagnostic procedure tells you to go to step 21 and measure the high pressure to return leakage directly. Disconnect the return oil line from the return oil filter and let it empty into a clean bucket. Leave the rock shaft halfway up. All other valves should be in neutral. Run the engine at 1,000 RPM and let the oil flow for 1 minute. Measure the oil in the bucket. If the amount is less than 1 quart, leakage is normal. Go on to the next diagnostic step, number 23. If the amount is more than 1 quart, there's an excessive leak in the rock shaft or SCVs. Isolate the source of excessive leakage by touching the SCVs and rock shaft housings. If one valve is hotter than the others, you've identified the leak. High-pressure internal leakage creates hot spots. As you isolate problems, the diagnostic procedure may tell you to immediately repair a problem before continuing with the rest of the procedure. Or it may tell you to take note of a problem and continue with the rest of the procedure. In either case, it is extremely important to finish all tests according to directions in the procedure. The hydraulic diagnostic procedure has several advantages over other methods. One is that larger John Deere tractors have large capacity pumps in their hydraulic systems. A substantial leak may not cause noticeable symptoms because pump capacity will make up for it. The hydraulic diagnostic procedure will identify minor malfunctions before they become major problems. Problems in other tractor systems may be related to the hydraulic system. For example, low lube pressure could cause a failure in mechanical components of the transmission. The hydraulic diagnostic procedure can identify those kinds of problems and prevent repeated failures in a mechanical system. The hydraulic diagnostic procedure eliminates the need for guesswork. In the vast majority of cases, it will lead you directly to the source of hydraulic system problems. These tests can be performed quickly and efficiently. With practice, it may actually take you less time to perform these tests than it took to watch this program.